Hello there. Question here for you to practice at home using this YouTube video. So we've got using the images below, evaluate if the coastal management strategies at Mapleton have been successful and giving reasons for your answer. It's worth 6 marks. I just want to show you some strategies for breaking down an exam question when you're practicing at home. And then sometimes these can work really well if you're trying to just map out in your brain how to answer a question as you do it in an exam. Obviously you won't be able to do all of this writing unless you ask for extra paper to plan, but you can do that as well. You can ask for that extra paper in an exam scenario, and you can plan out your answer, and then if you don't want to submit that bit of work with it, you don't have to. You can go ahead and bin it, or in your actual GCSEs you'd have to submit it with your work. But here we go. So the question is already read out there, and I've taken that idea of Mapleton's coastal management strategies that we have to evaluate, and I've made a mind map out of it. So you're due now to ask, pause the video, can you, using your information, your research, your pages of the textbook that we've read, and your worksheet that we did in class, would you be able to do a mind map and come up with some ideas of how Mapleton has been protected by coastal management? There's a couple of images to help you out down there, and you can see Longshore Drift coming from this direction where my mouse is moving towards these stone groins. So would you be able to put down the 2 coastal management strategies that have been used, and would you be able to say what is not being done? So you can pause the video, you can try and fill out this mind map yourself, or you can continue on. So if you've unpaused now, we're going to move on and see if we can come up with some of those strategies. Firstly, we've got groins, starting on the left-hand side here. The stone groins that I mentioned before, they're protecting from longshore drift. We've got on the right-hand side rock armour, and then rock armour can be found at the base of the cliff here. And if we look at it, this is another angle of the image. This is the rock armour along the cliff base, behind the groins. Remember, these are stone groins, by the way, so they're more expensive than wooden groins. We also have the idea of doing nothing, and on the other side here, where these cliffs are, and on the side here, not protected by any rock armour here, no rock armour here, just allowing the cliff to erode and break down, and the buildings that are in the background here of this cliff are going to be struggling to do anything against that erosion, and people are going to have to leave. All of this land is either farmland or just not being used. It does have the appearance of not being used at all. So doing nothing and having no defences between towns is a form of coastal management, because it's allowing for that rock to be eroded. It's called doing nothing. Whereas these 2 strategies, groins and rock armour, they're type of hold the line strategy. Now, after you've come up with your different strategies by looking at the key terms in your answer, you might be thinking to yourself, how am I going to structure my paragraph? And there's a few things that you could be doing. I want you to pause the video and decide which one you would use. Would you use point, evidence, explain? Would you use point, evidence, explain, and then link back to the question? Would you use point, evidence, explain, and then answer, have a sentence about whether or not this has been a successful strategy? Does the question ask us about success in a strategy, or is something that the council or government is being asked to do or having to do? And then general comment, specific example, based on looking at an image and saying what you see only, and only what you see, and not linking back to theory. So you could pause, have an idea of what you'll be writing about. So of course, I'm going to circle these 3 because any of these 3 can be chosen. I'm going to go down from this question, and I'm going to say P can be used, and then you could have a conclusion at the end of 2 or 3 paragraphs using point, evidence, explain. You could have a link sentence at the end of each paragraph, and then maybe just a conclusion sentence, or a link statement it's often called, at the end of all of your at the end of your answer, after your paragraphs, not at the end of each paragraph, which you would have in this strategy. And then P's, which I'm going to just highlight something in a second, but P's is point, evidence, explain, and then say if it has been successful or not. And of course, I think it makes most sense to use that last strategy for this question, because the key term successful has been given to us. We definitely should be using that strategy, because it just lends itself to this type of question, and we can make sure that at the end of every paragraph we say whether or not it has been a successful strategy and the reasons why. So taking that then and taking rock armor and groins, we're going to build up a paragraph and make sure that we hit all of the success criteria that this question requires. So I'm just going to show you those success criteria first of all before we look at this information in purple. We need to make sure that our answer has AO1 knowledge, AO2 explanation, and AO3 evaluation. So knowledge is basically going to be any data that you can remember, any named places, and describing those places and how they link to the question. Explaining that is going to be then saying, well, what I've talked about, the types of coastal management strategies that I've given examples of in my knowledge, for example, the groins that cost £125,000 a year, that's my AO1. I'm going to take that then and I'm going to say something like, these groins have led to the coastline being protected by reflecting wave energy, because that's explaining what they do. This led to. And then evaluating that, I'm going to say, by protecting the coastline from wave energy, this has been successful because it has protected against coastal erosion and people feel safer. People are more likely to move to this location. People are not leaving because they feel safe and because they see that the waves are not breaking down the cliff and not leading to fast erosion in comparison to other places. Now, what you need to do now is look at the bullet points, and I want you to, thinking about building from 1 to 3, I want you to see if you can order these statements in the order that they should go and build up a paragraph using them. Take away the bullet points, write them, maybe just in your mind order them from 1 to 4, saying these are 1 to 4 here, put them in another order, say 4, 3, 2, 1, or 1, 2, 4, 3, or whatever order you think they should go in. Or you can write them out and you can actually order them in the way that you think they should go, and then go back and see if you were correct. So you can pause that, give yourself a chance to do that, and then you can press play again. And let's imagine we've pressed play. Okay, so just to highlight each type of skill that each sentence is, this sentence here shows that it's talking about farmland being protected, areas remaining stable, in the Holderness making the strategy successful. This is AO2, AO3. This certainly needs to go to the end. I'm going to show you that later. This was AO1 because we have the cost of the groins, the cost of the rock armor in Mapleton. That's AO1 skills because it's just data. We haven't done anything with that data. So the order that this information should go in needs to be as follows. First statement is going to be AO1, Mapleton's cliffs are being protected. Gives peace of mind to residents. It's just a clear description of the strategy. AO1 and 2 coming later on, saying that the data that we've given in rock groins and costing £125,000 is how the area is being protected. So I guess there is some AO2 skills here. You could also argue that there's some AO2 in here, some explanation. This is purely explanation, saying that this strategy in the second sentence has led to wave energy being reduced or completely redirected, minimizing the damage to cliffs and buildings like farms. And then just building up towards those AO3, that successful or not comment. Therefore, farmland has been protected, land values remain stable. This is successful in the Holderness in certain places like Mapleton. I want you to go and practice that strategy. Obviously, give yourself a mark out of 4 to see if you got them in the right way, or comment on your answer and say, I needed to change these two because I mixed them up. I accidentally put the data first, not my point of my paragraph. And then finally, you've got a mind map here that we started off with. You've got this idea of no defences in certain areas, allowing the coastline to erode because maybe the land value is not very high, or maybe because the gaps have been left because the coastal erosion is very, very high in those areas. I want you to build up a similar paragraph using knowledge, talking about Mapleton and the areas between towns in the Holderness that are not protected, why they're not protected, maybe the low value. Go in and talk about that idea in your explanation and say, not protecting these areas leads to this kind of problem. And then evaluate whether it's been successful or not. You decide, is it successful to allow those cliffs to collapse and take away buildings and make people homeless? So it's an evaluate question for a reason. We need to make sure that we give positives and negatives. That's where you have this opportunity. By doing nothing, there's clear positives and negatives to that. I want you to show what they are. Maybe the government having more money to spend on other places with higher populations, that could be a positive. Maybe doing nothing is not good for ecosystems, takes away their ecosystems and their habitats. That's a negative. So best of luck with that. Make sure you are well prepared for your assessment.